Shalom Alechem, Assalamu Alaikum, Irini Mazisu, Pax Vobiscum. Welcome back. We're going to look at 1 Samuel chapter 2, also known as 1 Kingdoms chapter 2 originally. So there's a lot to cover. This took me quite a while to go through. So beginning in verse 1, these are the words of the mother of Samuel. It says, "My heart is established in Adonai," versus "my heart rejoices." So we can see one's factual, one's more emotional. Not to say the first one isn't emotional, but it seems to be more like a matter of factly. "My horn is exalted in Elohim, in my Elohim," versus "my horn is exalted in Yah, in Adonai." "None righteous as our Elohim," versus "none beside you." So one is saying, is bringing focus, attention to, that's verse 2, okay. Sorry, I'm kind of getting a little out of sorts here, okay. "I've rejoiced in your salvation," that's the same. So verse 2, it's describing how none is as righteous as Elohim, as our Elohim, the Elohim of Israel, versus there's no one besides him. I mean, there are other Elohim, but they are fake. They're not the same as him. Although in some scriptures there is no Elohim besides me, is what he says. I mean, not any real Elohim anyway. Those are fake Elohim. "There is none holy besides you," versus "neither any rock like our Elohim." So again, pointing out not only is he righteous, but he's also set apart. He's holy. Versus neither is there any rock like our Elohim. Verse 3, "Boast not and utter not high things. Let not high-sounding words come out of your mouth," versus "talk no more so exceeding proudly. Let not arrogancy come out of your mouth." So the difference here is high-sounding words, the verbiage, the wording being used is exalted itself. The language being used is erudite for vanity's sake, for the sake of arrogance. I should say for vanity's sake. But the arrogance in the Masoretic being described, arrogance, pride, this is more attitude than the verbiage, the wording. Significant difference, for Adonai is an Elohim of knowledge, and prepares his own designs. And by him actions are weighed in the Masoretic. So this does require meditation to fully understand. I don't believe I fully understand what this means. But Elohim has his plans, essentially, versus people's actions are being judged by him. Okay, I'm just going to leave it at that. Verse 4, "Waxed feeble," versus people's, I should say, broken. So one is weakened, has grown weakened. One is unusable. You can't use that bow anymore. That has been broken. "The weak have girded themselves with strength," versus "they that stumbled are girded with strength." So want to point out that there's a contrast being shown here, being displayed, that the mighty are contrasted with the weak, versus the bows of the mighty men. So the mighty men and those that stumbled, they're not so much contrasted, because they that stumble are like those who fail, who slip up in terms of this, following and trying to obey Adonai, being a servant of Adonai. If you stumble, then you're no longer in good standing, so to speak. You've failed. There's a setback. So one is saying that there's someone who's weak, or someone who's perceived as weak, versus those who stumbled. And so those who are mighty are perceived as mighty, and those that have stumbled, they are not uh, seen in a favorable light by Adonai, whereas those who are weak, or are perceived as weak perhaps, are, because Adonai tends to work with those who are marginalized, who are perceived as weak, those who are the underdog, those who are the outcasts, those who are perceived as small and little, and he tends to exalt the humble and work miracles through them. Because why would he work through the strong when the glory would not be given to him, it would be given to the strong because of their strength? Verse 5, they that were full of bread are brought low, the hungry have forsaken the land. So the contrast being made here is those who are full of bread are humbled, and the Masoretic, they were full of bread, but now they've hired themselves out for bread. So they're now working to earn their daily portions. Doesn't describe that in the Septuagint. It just leaves it a little vague, saying that they've been humbled. And the next part of the verse says, the hungry have forsaken the land. So they've left. They've moved out of town. However, it says in the Masoretic, the hungry have ceased. So they've either died or they've stopped doing something. But if we look at the Hebrew here, ceased, chadal, to desist. So it seems to be that they've stopped. Stop doing what? We don't really know. So they're lacking is another way to put it. But in any case, they've left the land. They've forsaken it. They're no longer there. Why would they be? Now they're going to go hungry and starve to death. So it makes sense they would leave. Verse 8, we have a significant difference here, talking about causing them to inherit the throne of glory. That's not the difference I want to point out. It's more the addition of what the Masoretic has added. It says, the pillars of the earth are Adonai's, he has set the world upon them. So that is more scientific kind of belief that people hold on to, or could hold on to, potentially. So that's verse 8. Verse 9, big difference here. It says, granting his petition to him that prays, versus actually nothing. I don't see anything here. He will keep the feet of his saints, and the wicked shall be silent. Okay. Interesting. So the difference is keeping the feet of his saints versus granting his petition to him that prays. So who is his? I believe this is in the right context. The previous verse tells us that it is the poor. He lifts up the poor and seats him with the princes of the people, causing them, the poor, to inherit the throne of glory, granting his petition, the poor, to him. The petition is to Adonai, that prays. He blesses the ears of the righteous. So that was omitted. So that's why I say it's a big difference. Besides the fact that it replaces that he grants his petition. It says he will keep the feet of his saints, not granting his petition to him that prays. Yeah, so that is a big difference. And the wicked shall be silent in darkness. That was added. Okay, next, verse 10. Adonai will weaken his adversary. Adonai is holy. Versus the adversaries of Adonai shall be broken to pieces. So we can see that not only is the adversary singular versus plural in the Masoretic, and it also says that Adonai is set apart. And they will be broken to pieces, not weakened. In the Septuagint, there's a process, they're weakened. In the Masoretic, it's like one and done, they're broken, and that's it, end of story. There's a large omission as well in this verse. It says here, let not the wise man boast in his wisdom, nor let the mighty man boast in his strength. Let not the rich man boast in his wealth, but let him that boasts boast in this, to understand and know Adonai, which is a possible parallel to boast only in Christ, in Mashiach. Okay. And we have another omission as well, to execute judgment and justice in the middle of the earth. So this seems to be describing Adonai, what he does, not what we are supposed to do. That's not the job of him that boasts, to execute judgment and justice. This seems to be perhaps a parenthetical thought, or at least associated with Adonai. Okay. Significant difference in the same verse. Adonai has gone up to the heavens and has thundered. Verses out of heaven shall he thunder upon them. So the difference here is that this could be messianic, as in Messiah died, was resurrected, and is ascended to heaven. It says here heavens, but has ascended to the heavens. Or this could be a reference to his earlier appearance in the Old Testament, in the Tanakh, I should say, not the Old Testament. I no longer want to use that terminology, but he did appear to Abraham during the events of the destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah. He appeared with his two angels and ascended afterwards. So it's hard to say which one this is talking about, whether it's past or was future, at least in terms of when this was written, because Messiah had not begun his ministry, was not born yet. I better not mute myself. It says here, in the next part, he will judge the extremities of the earth. He gives strength to our kings. He will exalt the horn of his Mashiach. Verses, Adonai shall judge the ends of the earth. It's not too different there. He shall give strength unto his king. Okay, so that's actually a big difference. I better outline that. So the difference here is, it's not our kings, it's not the kings of Israel, plural. It's one king, and he will exalt the horn of his Mashiach. Okay, so that's what the Masoretic is saying, that it's not our kings, it's not exalting the kings of Israel, and he's not giving strength to the kings of Israel. He's giving strength to his only king of Israel. So we know that there was no king in Israel yet in the timeline of this account. We're only at 1 Samuel or 1 Kingdoms. So this seems to be a prophecy of what's going to happen, because the kingdom of Israel has not been established yet. So because this channel favors the Septuagint, and because it is historically and factually correct in so many ways, yes, we go with what the Septuagint is saying. Adonai indeed gave strength to the kings of Israel. He gave them victory in battle. He's the one who gives them victory in battle. So it's not that he shall give strength just to his king. It's not short-sighted just to look at one king. It's all the kings, as well as the ultimate king, who is the Mashiach, who will reign forever. There's another omission. It says here, and she left him there before Adonai. Okay, so that's an important factoid. Was she just there? No, she had to go somewhere. She left him there, him being Samuel, before Adonai. Verse 11, Samuel's mother, Hannah, went back to Armathaim, versus Elkanah went to Ramah to his house. Okay, so that's where she left. When she left Samuel there, that's where she went, to Armathaim. But here it's saying Elkanah went to Ramah to his house in the Masoretic. In verse 12, it talks about evil sons. The sons of Eli or Eli, the priest, were evil sons versus sons of Belial. Verse 13, claim versus custom. Verse 14, great cauldron, blazon, or I should say brazen vessel, versus a pan or kettle. And there's an omission of to sacrifice. Verse 15, I will, versus talking about the priest's servant. I will by no means take of you sodden flesh out of the cauldron, versus he will not have, meaning the priest. So sodden, let's look that up. Just pause this for a moment. I'm going to look up the word sodden. What does that mean? Okay, so sodden means heavy with moisture or perhaps liquid. Okay, so I will by no means take of you meat that is heavy with liquid or moisture out of the cauldron. Okay, so this is seems to be boiled meat. So I'm not going to, it says, I will by no means take this boiled meat, but raw. In the Masoretic, it's an addition of but raw. Verse 16, there's another omission. It says here, that sacrificed was omitted. If the man that sacrificed, so it's not just the man, it's the man who sacrificed specifically. And then it says, first, let the fat be burned, versus let not fail to burn. So there's an order of things. There's an omission of for yourself of all things. There's another omission of no or nay. So this was inserted by the translators in the Masoretic. Verse 17, they set at nothing, significant difference here. They set at nothing versus they abhorred. So they made of no effect the offering, or they brought shame to the reputation of the offering of Adonai, is perhaps another way to interpret it. Versus they hated, they abhorred the offering of Adonai. The third commandment gives us more information that if you take the name of the Lord in vain, take the name of Adonai and you turn it to nothing, you're bringing shame to his reputation, to his name, to his character, so to speak. You're putting dirt on the honor that should be there. You're putting shame rather than honor, and that's what is happening here. It was a great sin before Adonai, because they were taking, it says here, I will take it by force. So they're not doing things according to how they should be doing it. They're not behaving according to the commandment. Verse 19, a doublet versus a coat. I'm going to look that word up too. Not sure what a doublet is. It seems to be an old English term. So a doublet. Who wears a doublet anymore? It says here, a man's close-fitting jacket worn in Europe, especially during the Renaissance. Okay, so that's what that is. So it is like a coat. Verse 20, we're going to ignore that one. In verse 22, there's an addition of, and how they lay with the women. Okay. Of the congregation. So that seems to be, I don't see anything about them lying with women. Yeah, I don't see anything like that mentioned in the Septuagint. Verse 23. According to this thing versus such things. So why is that a significant difference? Because he's hearing this thing that is being reported, not such things, not multiple things. It's one big thing. And an addition of evil dealings. That terminology being added. Verse 24, an omission of do not so. Don't do this. Don't do so. Okay, is this redundant or a typo? The following, the report I hear is not good. For the report I hear are not good. Okay, or is not good. For the report which I hear is not good, do not do so, for the reports which I hear are not good. Okay, so you know what? I'm going to look that up in the hard copy just to verify whether that is a typo or redundancy. Okay, so I looked it over in the original, and it does seem to be a redundancy at first glance, but when you read it in a certain way, like I'm going to read it right now, "No, my sons, for the report which I hear is not good." Okay, so there's a question being asked to him, or to his sons. He asked them, "Why do you do according to this thing which I hear from the mouth of all the people of Adonai?" So that's the question. The answer is no. Sons, for the report which I hear is not good. And then he is reinforcing this statement, saying, "Do not so, for the reports which I hear are not good, so that the people do not serve Elohim." So he's saying, do not do so as the reports which I hear that are not good. So it's just being thorough, talking about don't do according to these reports, because these reports are causing the people to not serve Elohim. So it's not that they're just making his people transgress. In the Masoretic, the Masoretic is saying, you make his people transgress. It's not that they're causing him to transgress. It's what they're doing. What is being reported is not good, so that the people are not serving Elohim. Because when you look at it in the big perspective, they are the ones who are the mediators between men and Elohim. So if they're not doing their job, then the people are not serving Elohim the proper way either. So that could be understood that way as well. Okay, a significant difference is so that the people do not serve Elohim versus you make Yah's people not, you make Adonai's people to transgress. So the people could be choosing not to serve Elohim, could be their choice, could be, as I explained, that because they're not doing their duty, so just by the relationship that exists there between the people of Israel and the mediators being the priests, and then Elohim, they're not fulfilling their parts of the chain, is broken in a way. However, in the Masoretic, it's talking about the people are being made to transgress because of the sons. They're the ones who are either pushing them to transgress or influencing them, or in any case, they're the ones who are causing them to transgress. So like they're forcing them, they're possessing them, whatever it is. Are the people accountable anymore because the priests are the ones who are to blame? That's what's That could be a broken logic to that verse. Okay, next verse 25, there's a big difference here. It says, they shall pray for him to Adonai, versus the Elohim should judge him. Okay, so the context is, if a man should at all sin against another, then shall they pray for him to Adonai. Okay, versus the Elohim should judge him. Okay, so we can see there's a proper protocol to follow. You should pray for him, first of all, if a man sins against another man. That's the intervention to be taken. That's the plan if that happens. In the Masoretic, it says the Elohim shall judge him. That could be Elohim, or that could just be a mighty man. Because it does say the Elohim. So it can be taken different ways. So that's verse 25. And then the second part says, by all means, destroy. And notice the difference as well. When someone sins against Adonai, who shall entreat for him in both translations? Who will pray for him? A man, human beings, man or woman, cannot entreat for that man who sinned against Adonai and pardon that sin. That's why people are saying to Yeshua, you're saying blasphemy. You can't forgive sins. Little did they know that is Adonai in the flesh. But they listened not to the voice of their father, because Adonai would by all means destroy them. By all means, you take any measure to do it, versus they listened not to the voice of their father, because Adonai would kill them. So one is saying by all means he would do it. Okay, they being the sons, they did not listen to the voice of Eli, because Adonai would by all means destroy them. So it sounds like that's what's going to happen. It's like their destiny, versus they didn't listen to their father because Adonai wants to kill them. Okay, so he wants to kill them, versus he would by all means destroy them. Interesting. Okay, well that one takes a little bit of... he wants to by all means destroy them. Okay, so actually in both it seems to be pretty similar, but to destroy by all means seems to be really... it's like taking it up a notch versus just slaying them. Verse 27, there's an omission of the word servants. They were servants in Mizraim, okay? They weren't just in Egypt, they were actually servants, or slaves, more specifically. Verse 28, I'm going to ignore that, but the second part, actually there's quite a bit to cover in 28, it says, to minister to me. I chose the house of your father, to minister to me. That was omitted. To go up to my altar versus to offer upon my altar. So they're physically going up to an altar versus offering, and then it says before me. So they added to wear an ephod before me, and then and I gave to the house of your father versus did I give? So it's a rhetorical question versus being factual. Verse 29, looked upon. Wherefore have you looked upon my incense offering and my meat offering with a shameless eye? Versus, why do you kick at my... Wherefore is why. Why do you kick at my sacrifice and at my offering? So one is kicking. I mean, I don't think it's physically kicking, but it says trample or hate. versus why have you looked upon it with a shameless eye? Shamelessly. They didn't do this accidentally. They were just shameless. There was no guilt. They weren't treating it with respect, the respect it should have been treated with. They didn't follow the protocol. Verse 29, continuing on. Incense offering and meat offering versus sacrifice and offering. There's an addition as well of which I commanded, which I have commanded in my habitation. How is it added? They, referring to your sons, they should bless themselves with the first fruits of every sacrifice of Israel before me. So they're the ones taking the first fruits. Versus make yourselves fat with the chiefest of all the offerings of Israel, my people. So it seems to be saying the same thing. It's just a little more, it's talking about the first fruits versus the fat. So they're not exactly taking the fat. They're taking the first fruits, which we know the first fruits are set apart. They're set apart to Adonai. That's what should be given to him. The best, the first. And then it seems to be by implication, if they're taking the best and the first, then Adonai is left with the secondary, not the first. So they are not respecting the order of the sacrifice, the protocols. Verse 30, a significant difference here. It says, he that sets me at nothing shall be despised. Versus they that despise me shall be lightly esteemed. Okay, if you set Adonai at nothing, if you bring his name to nothing, breaking the third commandment, if you take his name in vain, you take his name and bring it to nothingness, put shame on it, what will happen? Well, verse 30 says, he will be hated. You will be despised. Versus, if you hate him, if you despise Adonai, you will be lightly esteemed. So you're still going to be esteemed, but not as much, just lightly esteemed. So that is, I'm going to call that a big difference, not just a significant difference, because the ramifications of that are more serious and less serious in the Masoretic. Verse 31, destroy your seed and the seed of your father's house, versus cut off your arm and the arm of your father's house. Okay, so I know this is being allegorical. This isn't being literal. Let's look it up. Arm. The arm, the foreleg. So, it can be taken that way, which is not the right way to take it, obviously. The arm. Just, I believe this is talking about the strength. So they're not being destroyed. They're simply being, having an amputation being done. They're just having their arm cut off. No, they're going to be destroyed. Utterly destroyed. They're going to be destroyed, their seed and the seed of your father's house. It's a very serious judgment. It's a serious sentencing. As an addition, in verse 32, you shall see an enemy in my habitation, in all which you give Israel. So that's not there in the original. Verse 33, big difference. It says here, and his soul may perish, versus and to grieve your heart. So this soul will perish. And I do not destroy man of yours from my altar, talking about Eli. His eyes may fail, his soul may perish. Everyone that remains in my house. Okay, so we can see he's going to destroy the soul of from his household of Eli, versus the man of yours I shall not cut off from my altar. Okay, so we see, okay, I guess I didn't catch that initially. Verse 33. Okay, so that is a big difference. if I do not destroy a man. So one is saying, if I do not destroy. So that seems to be almost like a rhetorical question. Versus the man of yours whom I shall not cut off. I shall not cut off. Okay. I'm just human. I'm doing my best here, but that was a difference I did not notice at first. So if I do not destroy, so that was inserted, and I do not destroy a man of yours from my altar, that is, his eyes may fail, and everyone that remains. Okay, so one is being destroyed, one is being cut off, and his soul may perish. So his soul is going to die, essentially, versus to grieve your heart. So you're just going to be sad. I'm going to make you sad. I'm not exactly going to kill somebody, just sadden you. And then there's a big difference in the same verse, another one. It's full of big differences. Verse 33. Everyone that remains in your house shall fall by the sword of men. Full stop. That's it. They'll be killed. Verses, and all of the increase of your house shall die in the flower of their age. Okay, so those who are the increase of your house, not everybody, just who are those part of the increase. So there's still going to be a remnant, but only the increase will die. And when? In the flower of their age. So in the ripeness of their age, maybe 20, 30. But here it doesn't talk about anyone will be spared. It's saying everyone will die in your house. And, excuse me, they will die and they're going to fall by the sword, regardless of age. There's no age being described here. There's no limits being set on their judgment. Everyone that's part of his house, that's the only limit. Verse 35, an omission of the word all that is in my heart, not just according to. Soul, all that is in my heart and in my soul, versus in my mind, okay? This is possibly a messianic verse if you put a comma after the word before. Okay, so let's try that. I will build him a sure house. So this is talking about the faithful priest who shall do all that is in my heart and in my soul. I will build him a sure house, and he shall walk before, comma, mine Mashiach, my Mashiach forever. And he shall walk before. Before me, perhaps. Mashiach forever. So you could possibly insert before me. So that does seem like a messianic verse. So that's a big verse. It's a messianic verse, possibly. But if we're talking about the priest doing according to which is in his heart and his mind, I'll build him a sure house. He shall walk before my anointed forever. So he's going to walk before my Christ forever. So who is this priest who's doing according to his heart and his soul if it's not Mashiach? It makes more sense to put a comma here. He shall walk before, comma, my Mashiach forever. So it's an anointed priest. It's a faithful priest who's been anointed who is going to do all that is in his heart, the heart of Adonai, and in his soul. Who else could it be who accomplish all those things besides Yeshua? Makes sense to me. And the last part we're going to look at, actually verse 36, the last verse, it says, to do obeisance versus crouch. It shall come to pass, he that survives in your house shall come to do obeisance before him. Okay, whoever survives in your house, Eli, shall come to do obeisance before him. for a little piece of silver, versus will crouch to him, will bow before him. And then there's an addition of a morsel of bread. Okay. Put me into one of your priests' offices to eat bread, versus put me, I pray you, into one of the priest's offices, that I may eat a piece of bread. So one is your priests, so under a priest that is under the authority of Mashiach, or one of the priest's offices. So possibly not under the authority of Mashiach, but here we can see it is your priest. He is the one who owns that priest. They are doing his bidding. They are his priest, versus just the priest. Okay, so that's all for this chapter. Again, this was a lot to cover, but we ended with a messianic verse, possibly a messianic verse, in verse 35. And then another bit of a prophecy in verse 36, potentially. It shall come to pass, he that survives in your house shall obey before him, the Mashiach, before this special priest who does all that is in the heart and soul of Adonai, just for a little piece of silver. Put me into one of your priest's offices to eat bread. Okay, so is that messianic, or is it going to be fulfilled? We'll see in the next coming chapters. So that's all for now for this chapter of 1 Kingdoms chapter 2, 1 Samuel chapter 2. Thank you very much for your attention. Until next time, we'll look at chapter 3. And until then, I bid you all Assalamu alaikum, Shalom aleichem, Irini Mazisu, Pax Vobiscum, peace be unto you, and Maranatha.